The human entered the palace. The alien princess never looked away. Towers of shimmering crystal rose into the violet sky, reflecting the light of twin moons. Streets flowed with energy, not just with vehicles or pedestrians, but with streams of luminous particles that seemed almost alive. Every corner of the city pulsed with quiet power, yet despite its brilliance, an unsettling calm hung in the air, as though the world itself were holding its breath. Elias took a deep breath and stepped down from the platform. The air was different here, denser, tinged with minerals and an unfamiliar ozone. He had trained for this, expected the alien environment to be challenging, but nothing could have prepared him for the overwhelming sense of being watched. Not by cameras or guards, but by the city itself. Every building, every street seemed aware of his presence. The palace loomed ahead. Its scale defied human comprehension. Towers spiraled upward, curving and twisting, adorned with floating gardens and bridges of translucent material. No wall seemed solid, yet the structure radiated strength. Legends spoke of the palace being impregnable, not through brute force but through intelligence and sheer will. Many species had tried to enter. None had succeeded willingly. And yet here he was. Elias' mind flicked back to the message that brought him here. A holographic projection of the Virelian Council had addressed him personally. Captain Kane, your reputation for ingenuity and unpredictability precedes you. You are requested to enter our palace and consult with Princess Lyriel on matters that concern the future of multiple worlds. Your presence is necessary. The trials you will face are beyond ordinary understanding. Proceed only if you are prepared to see the universe differently. Prepared or not, he had come. A pair of palace guards approached, tall and slender with elongated limbs that moved fluidly, their skin shifting colors in subtle patterns. Their faces were smooth, almost featureless, except for eyes that shone like polished gemstones. Elias' hand instinctively went to his side, but he remembered he had no weapons permitted inside. Diplomacy, ingenuity, and patience were his only tools. "Welcome, human," one said in a voice that resonated in his chest. It was deep, musical, yet incomprehensibly precise. "The princess awaits." Elias nodded and followed them. The entrance hall was a cathedral of light and structure. Walls of translucent crystal arched above him, stretching far higher than any human building he had ever seen. The floor was alive with faint pulses of color, reacting to each step he took. He felt an odd connection to it, a subtle hum that seemed to acknowledge him, testing him in some unspoken way. As they walked, he noticed subtle movements in the hall. Courtiers and attendants of various alien species watched him from the shadows. Some were humanoid, some completely foreign with multiple eyes, limbs, or shifting forms that defied human understanding. Whispers floated on the air. Some were nervous, others curious. Many were skeptical, their expressions betraying disbelief that a human had been allowed this far. Elias met their gaze evenly, letting a quiet confidence settle over him. Humans were unpredictable, and perhaps that was exactly what the Virelians needed. The guards led him to a set of massive doors that seemed to shimmer, folding and unfolding like liquid metal. "Beyond this, you will meet the princess," one said. The words carried weight, a warning and a promise at the same time. Elias' heart beat faster. Not from fear, but from anticipation. He had faced dangerous worlds, hostile species, and impossible odds before, but nothing had prepared him for the weight of an entire world's gaze. The doors opened. Inside, the throne room was unlike anything Elias could have imagined. The ceiling soared miles above, adorned with floating lights that mimicked the constellations of Virelia's sky. The walls were alive with shifting patterns, colors blending and flowing like liquid art. At the center, on a platform that seemed to float above the floor, sat Princess Lyriel. She was unlike any being Elias had ever encountered. Tall and regal, her skin shimmered with faint iridescence, and her hair flowed as if suspended in water defying gravity. Her eyes were large, piercing, and unwavering. They were the kind of eyes that made you feel as though she could see the very core of your being. When Elia stepped forward, she did not flinch, blink, or turn away. She simply watched, her gaze steady, calm, and intense. For a moment he felt exposed, as though every thought, every motive, every memory was laid bare before her. But there was no malice in her eyes, only a sharp, calculating interest, as though she were weighing his worth silently, like a jeweler appraising a rare stone. "Captain Elias Kane," she said, her voice smooth and melodic, yet carrying an authority that filled the room. "I have heard much about you. Curiosity, courage, and ingenuity are rare in a single being. Tell me, human, why did you come here?" Elias swallowed, collecting himself. "I came because I was asked, and because I am curious. I want to understand your world, your people, and how I can help." Lyriel's eyes never left his. She inclined her head slightly, a subtle acknowledgement that his answer was not merely polite words. "Very well. But understand this, Virlia is not a place of simple questions and answers. Every choice you make here will be tested. The palace watches, the council watches, and I watch. Do you accept these terms?" "I do," Elias replied firmly. A faint smile touched her lips. "Then we shall see if a human mind is truly capable of navigating the complexities of Virlia." Elias was escorted deeper into the palace, through corridors that seemed alive, walls breathing softly with light and sound. Courtyards opened into gardens of floating flora, some glowing with bioluminescence, others emitting melodic hums when touched by the wind. He could not help but marvel at the artistry, the intelligence, the sheer audacity of the architecture. Every part of the palace seemed to demand respect, yet also whispered challenges to anyone who dared to walk its halls. As they walked, Lyriel spoke, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of expectation. "Many outsiders have tried to understand Virlia. Most failed not because they were incapable but because they were unwilling to see the world differently. Humans, you are unique in this." Elias nodded. "We survive by adapting, by thinking differently. That's what we do." She studied him for a long moment, then said, "Perhaps that is why the council requested you. Perhaps you are not like the others. Perhaps you can succeed where they did not." They arrived at a chamber filled with holographic displays and floating artifacts. Lyriel gestured toward them. "This is the beginning of your trial, not of strength, not of combat, but of mind. You will face puzzles, dilemmas, and decisions that test not only logic but ethics, creativity, and empathy. Each choice will be observed, each reaction recorded. Some challenges will seem impossible, others trivial, but every moment is a step toward understanding the delicate balance of our world." Elias stepped closer, studying the floating displays. Each one was a simulation of a scenario he could not yet fully comprehend. Cities under threat, civilizations at risk, moral choices with no clear answers. His heart pounded with excitement. This was unlike any mission he had undertaken before. Here, the stakes were not just survival, they were understanding, insight, and trust. Lyriel's voice brought him back. "Remember, human, the palace does not yield its secrets easily. You may fail, you may succeed, but above all, you must learn to see with more than your eyes, think with more than your mind, and act with more than your instincts. Only then will you begin to understand Virlia." Elias took a deep breath, the weight of her words sinking in. "I understand." "Good," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Then begin." The first simulation flickered to life. A cityscape under attack, alien civilians fleeing, complex systems failing. Elias studied it, analyzing, calculating, improvising. Already he felt the thrill of challenge, the pulse of discovery. The palace seemed to hum around him, alive and aware, observing every move, every thought. Lyriel watched silently, her expression unreadable but intense. She had never seen a human approach such problems with a mixture of logic, instinct, and imagination. And though she would not admit it yet, a small spark of curiosity and perhaps respect began to grow within her. Outside, the palace remained calm, but within its walls the trial had begun. And Captain Elias Kane, human among aliens, was about to change Virelia forever. The palace was quiet, yet alive, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting to see what the human would do next. Captain Elias Kane stood in the center of the chamber, eyes scanning the holographic city that floated before him. Buildings of impossible shapes shimmered, streets twisted in ways that defied logic, and the people, tiny, glowing figures, moved with patterns that seemed chaotic, yet held a rhythm he could not yet understand. Lyriel remained on the platform above, her gaze fixed on him. Her eyes never wavered, never flicked away, and in that stillness, Elias felt both judged and understood. It was unsettling, yet strangely comforting. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen, not just for what he could do, but for who he was. The first trial began without a word. The cityscape shifted, showing a crisis that needed immediate attention. Bridges collapsed under invisible forces, and thousands of citizens fled into streets that were quickly being consumed by strange, glowing energy. Elias' mind raced, thinking of solutions, of strategies, of ways to save as many as possible. He reached out, touching the holographic controls, and felt the simulation respond beneath his fingers. It was alive, interactive, challenging him to predict outcomes, anticipate consequences, and adapt quickly. He redirected energy flows, constructed emergency pathways, and guided citizens to safe zones, all while balancing multiple disasters at once. Lyriel watched, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes were sharper than ever. She noticed how he paused before acting, how he considered both logic and instinct, how he balanced efficiency with empathy. Many humans might have rushed, overcorrected, or panicked. Elias did not. He adapted. He thought differently. He acted as a human, but in ways that only a human could, blending reason with creativity, instinct with analysis. After hours that felt like minutes, the simulation stabilized. The city was intact, its citizens safe. Elias stepped back, breathing heavily, feeling both relief and exhilaration. He had passed the first test, though he knew the palace held many more. Lyriel descended to meet him, her movements graceful, almost floating above the ground. "You handled the first challenge well," she said. "But Virelia's trials are not measured in single victories. They are measured in understanding, in insight, in the ability to see connections that others cannot." Elias nodded. "I understand. Each step matters, not just the outcome." She studied him silently for a moment. "Good. Then you are ready for the next test." The chamber shifted. Walls melted into transparent screens showing alien landscapes, complex machines, and networks of information flowing in patterns too intricate for most minds to comprehend. The next trial was not physical but mental, a test of logic, memory, and perception. Elias' task was to identify anomalies, to solve problems embedded in layers of information, each requiring both focus and creativity. Hours passed as he worked, each puzzle more intricate than the last. Sometimes he succeeded immediately, other times he failed and had to adapt quickly. The palace watched, and Elias began to feel as if the walls themselves were evaluating him. Each success seemed to awaken a faint resonance, a subtle acknowledgement from the palace that he was capable, that he belonged. Lyriel observed quietly, occasionally offering a comment or hint, never more than necessary. Her eyes never left him, and he began to notice small, almost imperceptible reactions, tiny nods, slight changes in expression, subtle acknowledgments of his cleverness. He realized that she was testing not just his skills, but his character, his resilience, his ability to remain composed under pressure. By the end of the day, Elias had completed the mental trials. Exhausted but exhilarated, he stepped back from the displays, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment. Lyriel approached him, her gaze steady. "You have done well," she said. "Few beings could navigate even half of what you have faced today." He smiled faintly, wiping sweat from his brow. "I didn't come here to impress. I came to learn and help." Her eyes softened slightly, though her gaze remained unwavering. "And that is why you survive where others fail. Many seek glory, power, or recognition. Few seek understanding. You are different, human. Perhaps that is your greatest strength." The night fell over Violia, but the palace remained luminous, alive with energy. Elias walked through corridors that seemed less intimidating now, more like a living organism guiding him forward. The courtyards were quiet, the gardens glowing softly in the twin moon's light. He paused for a moment, taking in the beauty and complexity around him. Here he realized life was not merely about survival or conquest. It was about balance, understanding, and cooperation. Lyriel joined him in the garden, stepping lightly across the floating pathways. "You are beginning to see," she said. "The palace is not just a home or a fortress. It is a teacher. Every wall, every structure, every being within it is designed to challenge assumptions, to test perception, to reveal truth." Elias looked at her, curiosity burning. "And you, what do you see in me?" Her gaze met his, unwavering, and for a moment there was silence between them. "I see someone capable of thinking beyond limits, of imagining solutions others cannot. I see courage not only in action but in thought, and I see potential." He nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. This was not a mission for fame or recognition. It was a mission to understand, to grow, and perhaps to change the fate of worlds. The next morning, Elias faced the third trial. This one was different. It was not a simulation, but a real test of diplomacy and empathy. He was presented with alien delegates from various species, each with their own agendas, conflicts, and suspicions. Their challenge was simple in words but complex in execution. Resolve a dispute threatening a minor planetary alliance, using only negotiation, insight, and understanding. Elias observed the delegates carefully. Each had motivations hidden beneath layers of tradition, pride, and fear. Many looked at him with skepticism, doubting that a human could navigate their intricate politics. But Elias knew that humans had a gift for seeing patterns others missed, for thinking creatively, for finding solutions where rules seemed impossible to follow. He listened, asked questions, and considered every perspective. He offered ideas that respected their traditions, while introducing new possibilities, bridging gaps that had seemed unbridgeable. Slowly, cautiously, the delegates began to respond, finding common ground, exploring compromises, and even laughing at the subtle humor he brought into tense moments. Lyriel observed from a distance, noting how he adapted to situations without relying on force, deception, or dominance. His approach was unlike anything the palace had seen. It was human, yes, but refined by curiosity, patience, and courage. By the end of the session, the delegates reached an agreement that seemed impossible at the start. They shook hands, shared nods, and even offered him small gestures of respect. Elias stepped back, exhausted but triumphant. The trial had tested not only his intelligence but his character, his empathy, and his ability to connect across differences. Lyriel approached him once again. "You are learning quickly," she said, "but the palace is not done with you. The greatest test is not intellect, nor skill, nor diplomacy. The greatest test is resilience, the ability to remain true to yourself when everything around you shifts, when chaos rises, and when every expectation is turned upside down." Elias met her gaze. "I am ready." She smiled faintly, a rare, fleeting warmth. "We shall see." The final hours of Part 2 were spent in quiet reflection. Elias walked the palace grounds, observing life that was both alien and familiar. The creatures, the architecture, the energy, it all seemed to pulse with purpose. He realized that understanding Violia was not a matter of observation alone. It required immersion, patience, and trust was something earned, not demanded. As he gazed up at the twin moons, he felt a strange sense of connection. He was far from Earth, far from everything he had known, yet he felt more alive than ever. He was no longer just a visitor. He was a participant in something greater, something that demanded courage, insight, and heart. Lyriel joined him silently, standing a few paces away. "You are beginning to understand," she said softly, "but tomorrow will challenge you in ways you cannot yet imagine. The palace watches, yes, but so do the forces beyond its walls. Not all threats are simulations or controlled environments. Some are real and some will test the very core of who you are." Elias nodded. "Then I will be ready. I have to be." Her gaze lingered on him a moment longer before she turned back toward the palace. Elias watched her leave, feeling a mix of admiration and curiosity. There was a strength in her that went beyond power or authority. It was the strength of insight, of patience, of intelligence that could match any challenge. And for the first time, he realized that perhaps humans and Violians were not so different. Both could adapt, both could endure, and both could rise to challenges no other species could face. As the night deepened, Elias stood alone in the garden once more, reflecting on all he had experienced. He had faced trials of intellect, diplomacy, and creativity. He had learned the palace was alive, not in the way humans understood life, but in ways that required patience and observation. And he had met Princess Lyriel, whose unwavering gaze had challenged him, inspired him, and perhaps, in some subtle way, respected him. Tomorrow would bring new trials, greater challenges, and deeper revelations. But for now, Elias allowed himself a moment of calm, a moment to appreciate the wonder, the complexity, and the promise of Violia. He was a human in a world of aliens, yet he felt ready. And the palace, alive and aware, seemed to acknowledge it. The sun rose over Violia, painting the crystalline towers in shades of gold and violet. Captain Elias Kane stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the city below. The air was calm, almost too calm. After days of mental and diplomatic trials, he felt ready for anything. Yet something in the atmosphere told him that readiness alone might not be enough. Inside the palace, Princess Lyriel moved with her usual grace, her eyes scanning reports, maps, and communications from distant outposts. She had always been calm under pressure, but today there was a subtle tension in her movements, a quiet alertness that did not escape Elias' notice. He had learned to read her expressions, small shifts in posture, subtle glances that spoke volumes. And today, they said something dangerous was coming. A loud alarm echoed through the palace, startling even the guards who had grown used to unusual events. Red energy lights flickered across the halls, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with urgency. Elias followed the flow of palace staff and attendants toward the central command hall, where Lyriel stood, her gaze steady, her mind already calculating the threat. "Captain Kane," she said without turning, "we have detected an incoming fleet, mercenaries. They are armed with advanced technology and are headed straight for the palace. Their goal is simple: capture the princess and seize control of Violia." Elias felt a surge of adrenaline. He had faced threats before, but never had he confronted an enemy so close to the heart of an alien civilization. "How many ships?" he asked, scanning the holographic projections. "Too many to count quickly," Lyriel replied. "They move with precision and coordination. They expect us to rely on standard defenses, but they do not expect creativity or adaptability. That is why you are here, human." He nodded. He understood. The trials had prepared him for this, not in theory alone, but in ways that tested his mind, his judgment, and his ability to act under pressure. "Then let's not disappoint them," he said. The palace command hall was a marvel of alien engineering. Holographic maps floated in the air, displaying the incoming fleet, energy fields, and potential defensive strategies. Lyriel and Elias stood side by side, analyzing every angle, every possibility. "They will strike in waves," Lyriel said, pointing at a projection. "First, they will probe our defenses. Then they will attempt to breach the palace perimeter. Finally, they will target the central tower. We must prevent that at all costs." Elias studied the fleet. Their movements were predictable in some ways but rigid in others. Humans had always excelled at finding patterns where others saw chaos. He traced the projected paths with his fingers. "We can use their predictability against them," he said. "If we create controlled chaos, force them to adapt constantly, we can turn their coordination into confusion." Lyriel finally turned to him, her eyes sharp. "Explain." He took a deep breath. "We divide our defenses into multiple layers, but we also create decoys and misdirection. We lure them into zones where they think they have the advantage, then counterattack in unexpected ways. Their technology is advanced, but it relies on their assumptions. If we make them doubt every step, they will hesitate, and hesitation is all we need." Lyriel studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Very well, we will try your approach, but know this, human, if it fails, the consequences are catastrophic." Elias felt no fear. "Only focus. Then we cannot fail." The palace defenses activated. Energy shields hummed to life, drones whirred silently above the towers, and defensive turrets aligned with precision. The first wave of mercenaries appeared on the holographic map, then in the skies above. Sleek ships glinted in the sunlight, moving with deadly intent. The battle began quietly. At first, the invaders attempted to probe the palace's perimeter, firing energy pulses at the walls and testing the shields. Elias watched the displays carefully, noting their patterns, predicting their moves. He directed defensive drones to fall back strategically, drawing the attackers into zones carefully chosen for counterattacks. Lyriel issued commands calmly, her voice steady, guiding her forces with precision. Elias noticed that she had begun to rely on his suggestions, integrating his unconventional tactics with her own experience. Together, they formed a strategy that combined alien technology with human unpredictability. The attackers were clever, but the controlled chaos worked. Ships collided, miscommunications spread through the fleet, and their formations broke apart. For the first time, Elias saw hesitation in their movements. That moment of doubt was enough. Palace drones struck with calculated precision, disabling engines and creating barriers of energy that forced the mercenaries into further confusion. From the balcony, Elias and Lyriel watched the unfolding battle. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes. There was respect, acknowledgement, and a spark of admiration for his quick thinking. Elias, focused on the battle, allowed himself a small smile. Humans had a way of turning chaos into opportunity, and today was proof. The second wave of attackers approached, more numerous and aggressive than the first. This time, Elias proposed a more daring tactic. "We create illusions," he said, pointing at holographic projections. "We make them think there are multiple points of attack, split their forces, and force them to respond in ways that leave them vulnerable." Lyriel nodded. "Do it." The palace systems responded instantly. Holographic decoys projected false ships, shimmering energy constructs that mimicked real vessels. The mercenary fleet took the bait. They fired at the illusions, diverted their formations, and exposed weaknesses in their own strategy. Palace forces struck decisively, exploiting every opportunity. Hours passed, though it felt like moments. The palace and city were alive with energy, lights flashing, drones moving, shields adapting. Elias coordinated attacks, predicted enemy maneuvers, and adjusted tactics on the fly. Lyriel's forces executed with flawless precision, guided by his human insight. The battle was far from easy, yet with each wave, the invaders faltered. Finally, the last wave approached, desperate and furious. They had realized too late that the human strategies were more effective than they could have anticipated. Energy pulses fired wildly, ships collided, and confusion reigned. Elias directed the final defense with calm determination, positioning drones and shield bursts to channel the enemy into a trap. The mercenaries were forced to retreat, their fleet broken, their plans defeated. As silence fell over the city, Elias stood on the balcony, chest heaving, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Lyriel approached him, her expression unreadable but her eyes shining. "You have done what few could," she said softly. "You have not only protected the palace but shown that human ingenuity is a force to be reckoned with." Elias shook his head, smiling faintly. "I only did what I thought was best. The palace, your people, they all played their part. I just helped connect the pieces." She studied him silently for a moment, then nodded. "That is true, but connection is a rare skill. Many leaders can command, but few can integrate, adapt, and anticipate as you did. You are remarkable human." Elias felt a warmth he had not expected. Praise from the princess was significant, but it was the acknowledgement of understanding, trust, and respect that mattered most. He realized that this bond, human and Virelian, was more than strategy. It was cooperation, unity, and a shared commitment to protect what was valuable. Later, as the palace staff assessed damages and repaired systems, Elias walked through the gardens once more. The twin moons reflected in the crystalline towers, casting soft light across the pathways. The air was calm now, serene, as if the world itself had breathed a sigh of relief. Lyriel joined him silently, stepping onto a bridge that floated above the glowing gardens. "Today, you have proven more than courage," she said. "You have proven that a human mind can adapt, improvise, and protect not only life but hope itself. That is a quality our world has rarely seen." Elias looked at her, curiosity and respect mingling in his expression. "And what now? Are there more challenges?" Her eyes remained steady, calm, and unwavering. "Yes, the greatest trials are yet to come. Not all threats can be seen, and not all dangers are physical. Some come from decisions, from alliances, from trust. You have learned to act under pressure, to adapt, to protect. The next lessons will test your judgment, your values, and your ability to lead without authority. That is when you will truly understand what it means to influence not only Virelia but the galaxy beyond." He nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The battle had been won, but the war of understanding, diplomacy, and leadership was only beginning. The palace had been a teacher, the city a test, and now the universe awaited his choices. That night, Elias stood on the palace balcony, gazing at the stars. Ships that had passed far above during the battle had left trails of light, glittering like distant fireflies. He thought of Earth, of the crew he had left behind, and of the strange, beautiful world he now called home. He realized that being human in this galaxy was both a responsibility and a gift. Lyriel joined him without a word, standing a short distance away. Together, they watched the stars, the palace, and the city below. There was no need for words. The connection between them was understood. They had faced chaos, strategy, and danger together. They had learned to trust, to adapt, and to respect the strengths of each other's worlds. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and new decisions that would shape the future of Virelia. But tonight, there was calm. Tonight, the palace had survived, the fleet had been repelled, and the human had proven that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could change the course of events in ways no alien strategy alone could achieve. Elias knew that he was ready. He also knew that the princess had seen something in him, something rare, valuable, and lasting. And in that moment, under the twin moons and the shimmering towers, he understood that humans had a place in the galaxy, not as invaders, not as conquerors, but as allies, innovators, and protectors. And Virelia would never be the same. The morning sun spilled across the palace towers, casting golden reflections across the crystalline gardens. Captain Elias Kane awoke to the quiet hum of Virlia, a world that now felt both alien and familiar. After the battle with the mercenary fleet, the palace had been repaired, but the sense of vigilance remained. Every corner of the city, every tower, every floating garden seemed to watch, waiting for the next challenge. Elias dressed quickly, his thoughts already turning toward what Lyriel had hinted at the night before, the next trial. Unlike the physical battles or the mental simulations, this one would be far more subtle. It would test not only his intelligence but his judgment, his ethics, and his ability to inspire cooperation among the many species that called Virlia home. Lyriel found him in the palace courtyard, her presence quiet yet commanding. She was as radiant and composed as ever, but there was a glimmer of anticipation in her eyes, a hint that today would be different. "Captain Kane," she said, her voice calm yet carrying weight, "today you will face your most important trial. The Council has requested your guidance in forming an interstellar alliance. The decisions you make will affect countless lives and the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy." Elia's heart quickened, not with fear, but with the recognition of responsibility. He had always faced dangerous missions, but this was different. The stakes were not just survival, they were the future of multiple civilizations. "I understand," he said. "I will do my best." Lyriel nodded. "Then come, the council waits." The council chamber was a breathtaking space. Towering pillars of crystal spiraled upward, refracting light into dazzling patterns across the room. Representatives from countless species filled the hall, each seated according to strict protocol. Some were humanoid, others entirely alien with forms and features that challenged human perception. All watched Elias as he entered. Many were skeptical, their whispers carrying through the chamber. A human, they thought. A single human. What could he know of interstellar politics and diplomacy? Lyriel guided him to the center of the chamber, where a holographic table displayed the territories, resources, and alliances of the region. She gestured toward it. "Captain Kane, the Council seeks a plan that ensures peace, stability, and cooperation. You may speak freely. Your perspective is unique." Elias studied the table carefully. The situation was delicate. Several species had long-standing disputes, some minor but festering, others rooted in centuries of mistrust. Resources were unevenly distributed, alliances fragile and tensions high. A single misstep could ignite conflict, while a thoughtful approach could bring lasting unity. He began to speak, calmly but confidently. "We need to focus on common goals first: security, trade, and mutual protection. Each species benefits from collaboration more than conflict. If we emphasize shared interests rather than differences, we can build trust." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some representatives leaned forward, intrigued. Others exchanged skeptical glances. Elias continued. "Next, we must create a structure that allows equal representation. Every species must feel heard, and every voice must carry weight. Leadership should rotate, with decisions guided by reason, not tradition or fear. And finally, we need a system of accountability, so promises are kept and violations addressed fairly." Lyriel watched him closely, her expression carefully neutral. She had heard many proposals, but few carried the clarity, simplicity, and practicality that Elias' words contained. He was not relying on force, deception, or intimidation. He was relying on insight, fairness, and the human ability to connect disparate perspectives. One representative, a being with 4 arms and luminous skin, spoke skeptically. "And you believe this? Human approach will work. Our history is long, our grievances deep. How can a single human solve what countless leaders have failed to resolve?" Elias met the being's gaze steadily. "I do not claim to have all the answers, but I do know that cooperation requires understanding, and understanding requires patience and flexibility. I am not here to impose a solution. I am here to help you find one together." You are the ones who know your histories, your needs, and your strengths. I only help connect them." The room fell silent. The representatives looked at each other, considering his words. Slowly, the skepticism began to wane, replaced by cautious curiosity. They began to ask questions, present concerns, and discuss possible compromises. Elias listened carefully, offering suggestions where appropriate, guiding the discussion without dominating it. Hours passed. The council deliberated, debated, and negotiated under Elias' guidance. The human approach of collaboration, empathy, and strategic insight gradually began to take hold. Alliances were proposed, compromises reached, and trust cautiously built. Lyriel observed quietly, her eyes never leaving Elias. She saw not only his skill but his character, his integrity, patience, and ability to inspire confidence in those who had doubted him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a framework for the alliance emerged. Representatives nodded, some with relief, others with hesitant approval. The council had agreed to work together, not because of force or fear, but because they saw the value in cooperation and recognized the wisdom in Elias' guidance. Lyriel stepped forward, her voice ringing clearly through the chamber. "Today, a human has shown us what can be achieved when intelligence, courage, and empathy are combined. Captain Kane has not only guided us but inspired us. Let this be the beginning of a new era for Vyrlia and our allies." Elias felt a surge of quiet pride, tempered by humility. He had not acted alone. The council had made the choices, but he had helped them see what was possible. It was a victory of understanding, diplomacy, and collaboration, the very principles he valued most. As the council dispersed, Lyriel approached him once again. "You have done more than I expected," she said. "You have not only passed the trials of mind, courage, and diplomacy, but you have also earned the respect of my people. That is no small achievement." Elias smiled faintly. "I only did what seemed right. I could not have done it alone." Her eyes softened, though her gaze remained firm. "And yet, you have proven that humans bring something unique to the galaxy. Creativity, adaptability, and insight. Qualities that are rare but invaluable. You have changed the way we will approach the future." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the sunlight dance across the crystalline towers and floating gardens. The city below was alive, vibrant, and filled with the promise of a new beginning. Elias felt a sense of accomplishment, but also of responsibility. The alliance was just the start. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges, mysteries, and opportunities, and he was now a part of it in ways he had never imagined. Later, as twilight approached, Elias walked through the palace gardens once more. The air was fragrant with alien blooms, the colors of the flowers shifting gently in the fading light. He paused on a bridge that floated above a glowing pond, watching the reflections of the twin moons ripple across the surface. Lyriel joined him, stepping silently beside him. "You have learned much," she said softly, "but understanding is a journey, not a destination. There will always be new challenges, new dilemmas, new decisions to face. The trials you have passed are only the beginning." Elias nodded. "I know, but I am ready. I have learned that being human is not just about survival or strength. It is about seeing, understanding, adapting, and connecting, and I will use that wherever I go." Lyriel regarded him for a long moment, her expression unreadable yet filled with quiet respect. "You have earned more than my respect," she said finally. "You have earned trust, not through power but through wisdom and character. That is something few beings, alien or human, can claim." He felt a warmth in her words, an acknowledgement that went beyond praise. It was recognition, understanding, and perhaps, in some subtle way, admiration. "Thank you," he said simply. The night deepened over Vyrlia, the palace glowing softly, alive with energy and possibility. The city hummed with quiet activity, a living testament to cooperation, innovation, and resilience. Elias stood on the balcony, gazing at the stars, thinking of Earth, of his crew, and of the strange, beautiful world he had come to understand. He realized that being human in this galaxy was not merely about exploration or survival. It was about contribution, insight, and courage, the ability to make a difference in ways that others could not. Lyriel joined him once more, standing a few steps behind, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon. "Captain Kane," she said, "you have shown that humans have a place in the universe not as conquerors, but as allies, innovators, and protectors. You have changed more than Virlia. You have changed the way we see the galaxy itself." Elias looked at her, a quiet smile forming. "And you have changed the way I see it too. This world, its people, and even you have shown me what is possible when courage, intelligence, and trust come together." For a long moment they stood in silence, watching the twin moons rise higher into the sky. The palace, the city, and the garden reflected the soft light, shimmering like a promise of hope, unity, and understanding. Elias realized that this was not the end of his journey, but a new beginning. The trials, the battles, the council, each had tested him, shaped him, and proven that humanity had a role to play in the galaxy. Not through dominance, not through fear, but through creativity, courage, and empathy. As he gazed at the stars, Elias felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. He was a human among aliens, a representative of his species, and a witness to the power of connection and understanding. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but he was ready. And Princess Lyriel, ever watchful, ever perceptive, never looked away. Together they would face whatever came next, forging a future where humans and aliens could thrive side by side. The palace, alive with energy and wisdom, had taught him much. But the greatest lesson was clear. Humanity's greatest strength was not its power, but its ability to adapt, understand, and inspire. And in that lesson, the universe had found a new hope. The human entered the palace. The alien princess never looked away.